And to go from thinking you were buried and forgotten and lost to realizing that you were being planted, it instantly freed me and changed my perspective because it was such a powerful change in perspective that allowed me to realize I was right where I was supposed to be.
I'm Amy Woodall, and this is The Conscious Habit, a show from the People Forward Network. We're teaching you how to incorporate love and consciousness at work, at home, and the world at large. You just heard from Deanna Dixon, singer, influencer, and serial mompreneur. Deanna is renowned as the Rideshare queen. She's an esteemed background vocalist, and she has worked with icons like Beyonce, Kanye West, and Monica. But unlike any other guest we've ever had on to date, Deanna and I have known each other since we were babies on the playground. And I've had a chance to witness firsthand her passion and her knowing deep within her soul what her life's path was meant to be. But what happens when this knowing of your purpose becomes a burden? Listen in as Deanna shares her experience navigating the entertainment industry, herself, and finding a stage she never expected. Take a listen. Conscious Habit listeners, I have to tell you, this is the first time I've ever had a guest on the episode who knew me back in the day. And I mean back in the day, like on the playground, elementary school. We knew each other back in the day. Our guest is Deanna Dixon. And you know, I think your story, Deanna, is going to be different than anybody we've ever had on. And that's why I was like, girl, you have to come be on this podcast, because something many of us spend our entire lives figuring out is why the hell we're here and what our purpose is. But Deanna's going to share a story with us. She has known what she wanted to be. I don't know if it was since you came out of the womb, but I do know she knew this on the playground in 5th grade. She knew what her purpose and passion was. And she's going to share her story of what happens when that passion becomes a burden and how do you find your way around it. So my friend, Deanna Dixon, Dee Dee, welcome.
I am so happy to be here to share this story and hopefully to expand somebody's mind and the way that they think about fulfilling their life purpose, as mine has expanded. But as you said, Amy, as a little girl, I remember specifically being in 1st grade when it dawned on me that I was here and all I ever wanted to do from that age on up was to sing. And as I've been able to really dissect what that meant and looked like to me, I remember as a kid growing up in the church, I would watch my mother get in front of the church and sing. And what she had the ability to do with her voice was so magical to me. She would make people cry. She would make people feel better. It was this magical tool that just was so healing. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to be that. And it's just something in me as a kid that's always wanted to be a healer. And I've always, said that people are my currency. And so I've always felt like my job was people. I was here to make an impact. So, yes, I always knew I wanted to sing, but I didn't know why until I got older, why I was so connected to that assignment. And the interesting thing for me, as you stated, how it becomes a burden is because I feel like the burden comes when you don't understand what that gift actually is doing. And you keep yourself in a box as to how you can complete the assignment. And for a long time, I felt I needed to be on a stage in front of thousands, hundreds, millions of people in order to make an impact. And it wasn't until I would say the pandemic is when my mindset on that really began to shift because when you link your value to your gift and only being able to do it in one capacity, then you go through what I called my identity crisis. Because I'm like, I'm not valuable anymore because I'm not on these stages. I'm not singing. I'm not connecting to people. And as the entire world, we had to really morph into a new way of connecting and communicating. And so I felt lost for a little while because the music industry was greatly impacted by the pandemic. I went from singing, with 150 other amazingly talented singers that had worked with people from Nicki Minaj to Janet Jackson. And we were traveling and working with, at the time, Kanye West, which was a big deal in our industry. And so when the pandemic happened, it came at a screeching halt and we were trapped in our houses. I was living in Los Angeles at the time. And a lot of us really went through a deep depression, became heavily addicted to substances, didn't even really identify it as such because we thought, hey, we're just filling in our time. And it was just difficult because you didn't know who you were outside of the stage. And I think, the best thing that God has really given me is the ability to control my perspective. It takes me sometime a little while, but when I get it and I realize like life truly is happening for me, like these chips are falling in the most beautiful way to set me up and to help me to get out of that box and realize that, as I said before, my stage is wherever I place it. And my audience can really be an audience of one. And that ability to see that my stage can go wherever I go has opened up so many opportunities for me. And I think I don't feel as burdened by my gift as I have before because as an artist, we never like to feel like we're in a box. And we don't like to feel like we're only valuable when we can use our gift in one way. And so I'm experiencing on this latter side of, I guess, what the pandemic offered for me, I have found a freedom that I didn't know I needed. And that freedom has allowed me to be more creative with my gifts.
I definitely want to spend some time getting into that and figuring, just talking about that for you too. Is like if we rewind, you knew what you wanted to be at a young age. You found it, you saw there was some connection that you had, you felt it in your body. Was there a time before, fast forwarding, when you went to go pursue? I want to kind of talk about the time before. Was there a time that you abandoned and then you had to refine? Can you kind of tell me your journey on following and the pursuit of passion?
Yes. I make a joke. I said I've broken up with music every other year. I have broken up with it a few different reasons. I would say I really began to pursue music when I was in my later teens, like around 16. I started competing in competitions. Up until age 18, I started, auditioning for TV shows like American Idol and then later The Voice. And I remember the first time I walked away from music was because I would take on those no's in a different way because I didn't understand the industry. I didn't understand timing. I didn't understand sowing seeds, like you audition and you move on. So because I didn't understand it, I always thought that no meant I wasn't good at it. Setting myself up for abuse is how it felt and just free rejection when I can, play smaller arenas and get the yeses that I want. I never understood that for every no, you're getting close to that yes, that it's just all a part of the process. So I remember walking away first and trying to be a normal human, as I call it. In my early 20s, like, I went as far as I became a stockbroker, I was working for Charles Schwab, and I was like, "Yeah, this is the life." I bought my first house at 23, I was married, I'm like, "Yes, I'm doing the American dream, I'm normal now." And that lasted maybe 3 years? I wanna say it lasted 3 years, and, an opportunity presented itself. I was probably in my mid-20s at this time. I was already married, and there was this really big gospel competition that was on BET Networks called Sunday Best, and I remember I auditioned and I made it. I was in the top 20. So that was what kind of thrusted me back in the world. Like, oh, I love it again. I got a yes. And so again, because I didn't understand the process in the industry, I always placed my value on who would accept me and placed my commitment on fulfilling my life's purpose on somebody accepting me and not realizing I learned this later in life that I was the one that needed to accept me. And some of my greatest opportunities have come from things I've created myself. So that took me into my mid-20s, and I think I played around with music again for about a few years, and then it got challenging in my marriage. And then I was like, this isn't worth it. My husband doesn't understand it. He doesn't like this world. And so again, I abandoned music because I'm like, okay, yeah, I got accepted now, but it made me feel like I had to choose. I couldn't have love and I couldn't have my purpose. So I was like, well, I'd rather have love. Then we went through, the love and having that, quote unquote. And I realized that no, you don't have to choose. There is a space where you can be all of who you are. And it's all about being all of who you are when you walk into a relationship so they can date that person, not one version of you. And so I do take responsibility for presenting one version of myself and then wanting someone to accept, like, okay, well, I'm really Beyonce. I was, Deanna Dixon that works in the corporate world and is a 9 to 5er and wants a kid and the picket fence, but I really want a mansion. So I stopped lying about who I was. And I believe that led to my divorce and me relocating to Atlanta. And so then that was a whole new chapter of, okay, I'm going to really do this. I'm not going to pretend that I'm this person. I found a way. I don't know if you remember the show Hannah Montana where she would kind of switch it on and off. So I kind of played that role for a bit. Moved to Atlanta in 2012, and I worked the corporate world, and then on the weekend, I would morph into Beyonce, as I would call it. And so I was playing both roles, so I felt like, okay, this is this is a better compromise because I've never wanted to be a starving artist, and I couldn't figure out at the time, how can I take care of myself before you get that big break and do music and not be homeless? So that to me was a happy medium for a while.
I love this. Like, there's like this theme of learning either or, either or, either or. Either I have this or I have that. Either I have this or I have, either I abandon myself or I abandon my passion. Like, that seemed like there was sort of that tug of war for you. When do you feel like you started leaning in to the also and? And it's, I mean, you were saying like, I wanted to be able to do my craft and make money. So it sounds like some leaning in there. But do you have some other ahas or times in life when you're like, oh shit, it doesn't have to be either or. Like, it can be both.
Yes, I think it happened for me probably within the last 4 or 5 years. I learned to be careful with the way I spoke about things because I was the only one placing limitations. And once I stopped using that type of verbiage, like I can't have love and this, and I started saying, I can absolutely be all of who I am, and someone will love me for all of who I am, and they are equipped to deal with that. It was more so my self-talk that changed, Amy, because I didn't realize that the ceiling was being placed over me by me. And so that has again opened up my world. It's opened up my thinking. It's allowed people to come to me that may not have come to me because I was blocking them with my words and my self-talk. So yeah, I realize now that I can have the dreams, I can have love, I can have acceptance, and that acceptance, I don't have to wait on that acceptance. It's me that really has to offer that acceptance first, and then the world opens up to me. Like, I think what clicked for me was when oh my gosh, I realized 5 years ago distinctly that I was literally writing my life story with my words. And I could look back over my life and see when I said things and it happened. And I was like, wow, I'm that powerful. So, in the same sense, I can say, I can have this, I can be this and be loved. And that also can happen.
It's so cool to just witness when people hit that stride of like, oh shit. I'm creating my life. Life isn't happening to me. It's responding to me. Like, I am creating my life based on my thoughts, my actions, my belief system, what I think is true. And a lot of times people put it into that category of manifestation. And when you hit that stride, Deanna, and you're like, oh, I am literally creating my life. What did you then lean into intentionally creating? You mentioned love, that you've got that going. What are some other things from that point, this 5-year mark till now, that you have intentionally created by changing your words and therefore changing what you're willing to accept?
Number one, I started paying attention to what I was listening to program and help me because I'm a human being and sometimes you'll get in that rut and it doesn't matter how many books you read, podcasts you listen to, and how many spiritual leaders and teachers and mentors you have. Sometimes you get caught in that trap of like taking on your circumstance and not being able to remember your tools. And so I really started downloading some powerful things into my mind and I want to speak to some of those things that a great friend of mine, she introduced me to this lady called Abraham Hicks that changed my life. Oh my god. So I do have an addictive personality, so when I love something and I'm interested, I OD on it. So I probably spent at least, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, 4 hours a day reprogramming my mind by listening to her teachings. I found her books, I found her YouTube channel, I had a podcast, and I spent the majority of my day reprogramming my mind by listening to her. She was one of my first assistants to control my thinking, my talking, my point of attraction. And I now wasn't allowing life to happen. I got into the driver's seat and I started controlling my life. It scared me to see how powerful that we truly are. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning, reprogramming. There is this thing in Christianity where we're so focused on humility that we will kind of downplay who we are to give more credit to God and not take credit for ourselves. And we'll kind of talk down to ourselves like, oh, it's not me. It's not me. Like, oh, like you can't even accept a compliment because you're so uncomfortable with being the focal point. And then I remember telling myself, like, if he created me, and I'm in his image. Why should I ever feel shame about getting credit for something? He created me to be powerful. He created me to be great. He created me in his likeness. So I have to own that. And owning that position of greatness and power and being someone that's impactful was also a game changer for me. So that was a few things that really started to change the course of my life.
I love the it's in A Course in Miracles where they say, like, a ray is not separate from the sun, a wave is not separate from the ocean, which to me is like, whatever your belief system is, whether you're like, I believe in Mother Nature, I believe in a God, I believe in a universe, I believe in myself, like whatever it is, to understand that there's only one thing and we all are it. We're all a representation of it. My own personal belief is like, I am God manifested as Amy. And so I get to come in and kind of operate and live and learn. And, you know, I am a creator on this earth, just like we have this name of God that's a creator in the universe. That's been my belief. I love that you made it there. Big fan of Abraham Hicks. And I also think that, like, yeah, how we start off our day and what we allow ourselves to hear, our brains are little bitches, okay? Our brains are basically going to say, hey, you're in this mood and you believe this is true. Let me help you make it easy and find all the evidence in the world that I'm going to put it in front of you so you can see no other reality. But if we're like, hey, I'm tired of my mind making me its bitch, like, we can begin to program it. I love that you spent 4 hours a day. I love it with all my heart and soul that you are all in. You are like you are a hell yes.
Hell yes, I OD'd. And of course, it's expanded. I've acquired new teachers that I really, really love. And meditation was added to my life as well. And I'm better at guided meditation than sitting. I haven't mastered it yet, but I think it's one of those things that I let go of being perfect at it, but just keep doing it. Keep doing it. And that habit, creating that habit of like, I have to set aside 5 minutes. And I actually dated a guy that introduced me to a concept that I was so anti at first. He used to tell me, he's like, "You need to have quiet time." And that was kind of what opened me up to meditation. I always wanted music playing, TV playing. I always wanted something. I remember the day, and this also was the pandemic changed my life for the better. I will say that. That's the one good that came. I remember the first day I rode my bike. I used to ride my bike with this speaker, and I would play my music in my little cruiser basket. And I remember I accidentally forgot it, and I was riding my bike, and I did not have my speaker. So I rode my bike, and it just was the elements, my mind. The amount of things and ideas and information that downloaded into me just from that quiet time, I remember calling him, like, just so hyped, like my inner self has been wanting to speak to me, but I haven't allowed that time for it to, like, communicate with me because I have been, like, putting all these other things that were distractions, and I got rid of the distractions, and it was incredible. I remember I wrote a song riding my bike with, no music. I just got so many ideas, it blew my mind, just all the things and information I was stopping from flowing to me. And it illuminated why when I would go to sleep at night, my dreams are so vivid. I'm like, maybe that's the only time it had to talk to me because I always had something in my ear. So yeah, meditation. My mom was laughing at me because when I was in Indiana, I stayed at her house, and it's this new guy, the same girl that introduced me to Abraham Hicks, introduced me to this guy named Elmer O'Locker Jr. He has a lot of manifestation videos on YouTube, but he has one in particular that I am obsessed with. It's called Manifest and Sleep. Girl, I have the best sleep. And he's just basically telling you, you are abundant, you are light. Girl, I'm dreaming of mansions, I'm dreaming of money. And my mom was like, I see why you are so motivated and ambitious because if this is the type of things you're downloaded into you, she said, I would probably wake up feeling super powerful too.
In your I want to like continue to follow along your journey and get to where you are today. I like how like the dream is unfolding of you knew you wanted to sing. It felt like there was only one way. Like I've got to be on stage with millions of people. You were able to check some of those boxes. You traveled with Kanye. The next big break was the Beyonce at the Oscars after? When did this happen? Was this after Abraham Hicks or before Abraham Hicks? Let's talk about Beyonce.
Oh, I have to tell this story. It happened so fast. So I moved to LA in 2019 and joined the Sunday service choir with Kanye. Pandemic hit early 2020, and little by little we started trickling back in and doing, the Sunday service gig with Kanye again. So mid 2020 August up till like 2021, it was still like it wasn't as consistent as we were accustomed to. I got introduced to Abraham Hicks the beginning of 2022, and I started listening to her in February. That's when like 4 hours. I'm being modest by saying 4 hours. I want to say it was probably 8 hours. So February 2022, I remember listening to her. I would listen while I was riding my bike, and I kept saying, so this was my first test. While I would ride my bike in California, I kept seeing Teslas. Like because things were slow getting back into the industry, that's when I first started doing Uber and I was doing it in between gigs. And I kept getting this ad from Uber that you could rent a Tesla. And I kept seeing Teslas, like my point of attraction was a Tesla, and I didn't understand why. But it was something about positioning yourself and walking into who you see yourself as and where you wanna be, and, like, not saying, "I'm going to get it," but I am. I am wealthy, I am powerful, I am driving this, and I did it as a test. I was like, "You know what?" I had a car, but I was like, "Let me rent this Tesla and see if it makes me walk differently, think differently, present myself differently. Does it help me to embody the person I'm trying to be?" So I remember I rented this Tesla and I did it just for a few weeks. And people was talking to me different, looking at me different. I was just different. This is a whole different behavior. And I remember I started writing out. I had did this mock bank statement where I made my bank statement with a certain number in it. And it was my screensaver on my phone. So every time I logged in, it said my Chase account had this much money in it. So program in my mind that I got this much money. I'm driving this Tesla. I'm really like embodying, like, I'm this girl. I'm this girl. I am not kidding. It was maybe a month and a half later that I got the call. I didn't even know what it was for. The call to they couldn't tell me who it was for because they said you have to sign the NDA first. But they was like, "Well, we just need to know if you're available, but trust me, it's gonna be worth your time." And at first I was like, dang, I gotta drive Uber, I gotta make some money. And I almost turned it down. It's like, you don't want to turn this down. Just trust me, make yourself available. And so I did. And I remember coming in the studio and I signed the NDA and it said Parkwood, I can't remember what it, but I'm familiar with Parkwood because that's like the name of like her company. And I was like, "Oh my God, is this for Beyonce?" They was like, "Yes. We're pre-recording, we're gonna be performing with Beyonce at the Oscars." And just so much unfolded from that opportunity, and then maybe a week later, I got a call to do the Grammys. And again, it was just the reprogramming of my mind, the way I was talking, what I was expecting, and it was like I was expecting opportunities to find me. I wasn't chasing it anymore. I was prepared for it. I was just in alignment with all of these goals and dreams, and it was a magical time.
I got goosebumps for you just thinking about it. What was the, I mean, here's the thing that I think we're, especially on our journey to learning ourselves, there's kind of this, again, back to the also and. There is this like, these things start to happen, and then we often build up this expectation of what's supposed to happen next. So you had this big, like, the Oscars happen, the Grammys happen. Where did your mind take you? What did you feel like was supposed to happen next because these other steps had been there? Or were you just open? Were you just like, I'm just open to whatever finds me? Or did that start to paint a picture of what life needed to now look like for you to feel like you were continue to do the climb?
So this is when I locked myself into it had to look this way for me to feel successful. And that is when it then became a burden again because you do get trapped into it has up, 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 up. And not realizing that when I say life is cyclical, it doesn't have to mean that it's like down and up, but you're going around a mountain and sometimes it is a little dip in it, but that dip is necessary. You know, there's some lessons, there's some conditioning, there is some information you need to equip you, there's some lifestyle changes that need to happen. So I got caught up. I got caught up and I got addicted to that climb, and I thought I had unlocked the game, and now everything was about to find me, and didn't realize there were some other necessary things that needed to happen within myself to unlock another greater stage. So, after all of those opportunities happened, what was happening simultaneously that I couldn't understand was it felt like as I was ascending professionally, my personal life was on the struggle bus. My daughter was doing absolutely terrible in kindergarten, like like it was the worst year. I'm like, who hates kindergarten? You know, I just remember kindergarten being like, you got a sticker, you got a honey bun, like it was the best. You're coloring, you're doing. It was the easiest grade ever. Whereas my daughter was in the principal's office every other day. It was to the point where, you know, I took her to see a therapist. We went to a um, mental health behavioral hospital, like all these things I was doing, trying to get her diagnosed with what I couldn't understand what was happening with her. So that was a struggle for me. I didn't predict that happening. You think, you know, when your professional life is going off, that everything will follow. So I didn't expect that to happen. So I was not equipped to handle the opportunities that were coming my way and then what was happening in my home. And it got so bad, Amy, to where I remember getting a call and they said she had her scissors and was trying to cut herself. And that for me was when I was just like, I will never feel successful if my daughter is not okay. And that was when I had to make a hard decision, and for a lot of my peers, they was like, "Girl, you're crazy. You're walking away at the peak of your career as a background vocalist. You've hit the pinnacle. You can now work with whoever you want to. Your resume has the right names on it that I don't have to." I wasn't auditioning, I was being referred for these jobs. For me, I'm so grateful that I was in tune with her, and even though I couldn't figure out what it was, I felt like as I was ascending, I was disconnecting from her and her needs, and she needed more structure, she needed more mommy. I had an incredible village out there, but your village will never replace you. And so this is when mommy had to realize that again, your stage is wherever you place it. And my favorite and most important audience will always be my daughter. And I believe that when you honor your responsibilities in that way, that's I feel like the universe, God, all of the people will conspire to support you in the greatest way and unlock the real doors for you. So I walked away at the peak of my background vocalist career and moved back to Atlanta without a real plan because all of my connections and all of the work I was doing, Atlanta has a great music arena as well, but the type of work I was doing was primarily in LA. So I moved back to Atlanta and I was like, I'll figure it out because I am that I'll figure it out girl. I didn't know it was going to take me as long as it did to figure it out. But I will tell you this, my valley is what I call it. And there may be a better word that I'll call it, but right now I'll call it my valley. My valley season did so much for my soul that I would do it again. I built some really incredible roots into the ground that I now feel more equipped to handle the success, the money, the opportunities that I ever would have been if I didn't come home and experience that valley season. I feel I have more clarity. I had to let go of drinking because, sometimes you get to a place where you realize I'm not like everybody else. Alcohol does something different in me than it does for the average person, and I didn't like what it did inside of me. I didn't like how I felt as a human. I didn't like how I felt as a mom. And, I feel more powerful. I feel more powerful and again, level-headed to face some of these giants and some of these demons that come with the industry that I'm a part of. And so life it was happening for you. Things are lighting up as it should. And I thank my daughter for being that person to redirect me and help me to pivot and create a life that had my stage, had my daughter also on the forefront. And so it goes to that and. It isn't either or, it's and. Like, it's all inclusive. My baby's happy. I feel like an incredible mother. And I also know I'm living my dream in this most unconventional, unpredictable, creative way.
I can't wait to talk about that, but I think what's really cool about your journey to reflect on it happens to I think everyone goes through this, it just looks different, right? If you're on this conscious journey of looking to be like, how do I learn how to overcome me? There's a book I downloaded not long ago upon recommendation called The Mountain Is You, and which really, I've been on this kick that because we can never escape ourselves and we are always stuck with us and we are our only guarantee. I probably say it on every damn podcast episode. Like, we've got to honor learning out how this works. And a lot of times we may have spent more time figuring out how our MacBook works or our cell phone or some new gadget. We may give it more of our time and attention to figure out its operating system than we do us. And I think in your journey, it's money and fame and abundance is really nothing without the root and the connection and the deep belief in ourselves to say, I'm worthy regardless of whether I ever get any of this, regardless of if I get an accolade or I get to sing on stage again. My worthiness is not based on my outcomes. It's just inherent. And when we get that lesson, I think that's what the valleys teach us is ooh, I question my worthiness because I thought it hinged upon those outcomes, but I'm seeing it never left me. And that is such a gift to then build upon all the success. And so was that like in your first off, what is the valley? You moved home, you didn't really have a plan. Share with the audience what was your valley?
Well, what I thought was my valley was having to do rideshare full time, which is what I thought. I was doing it temporarily because it offered me the most flexibility. I could just instantly start making money once I hit the ground. And I felt I had sown enough seeds in the corporate world and the music world that the opportunities was about to be busting wide open. Especially I just sang with Beyonce. Oh, I'm here, y'all. I'm in Atlanta. Let's go. And, the valley came when those doors didn't bust wide open for me. And it wasn't even just the opportunities. Also, I was gone for 3 years. So although I had a great network of friends, personally, professionally, people were in different places in their life. They had had children. They went from being full-time artists to working full-time. So people's schedules were different. And I was not prepared for the loneliness I was going to feel. Like, all of my friends at the time were just in different stages. The group that I had kind of was responsible for, that was the glue of, because I had left, it had dismantled. They didn't hang out anymore. They were not doing activities regularly. They weren't going to the movies and doing game night. So I tried to pick up where I left off, and it wasn't there anymore. And I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't prepared for the other big draw to come back to Atlanta. Was my daughter's father was here, and he had had more children since she left. So, whereas she was the youngest when we had moved away, she wasn't the youngest anymore. So, in a sense, she wasn't top priority. She was just another one of the kids. And the prioritization of her wasn't where I thought it would be, considering she had been gone for 3 years. I wasn't prepared for that. So I came back to a lot of disappointment, a lot of things that had shifted, and I was not prepared to deal with feeling so alone. And I didn't have that community that I had walked away from. I had an amazing community in California, and I thought, oh, I was coming back to the best community because most of my friends are in Atlanta. So I dealt with that. That brought some depression. And then I didn't even really deal with the depression of being a full-time rideshare driver because I just knew it was temporary. I'm like, oh, it's coming. These opportunities are about to bust wide open. And then 3 months into being here, I was still driving. And I was like, "What is going on?" Like, this is the strangest thing ever. I might have gotten 2 opportunities, 2 studio, sessions, but it was just trickling in so slow that I was like, "Oh, I'm really a Uber driver. Like, this is what I'm doing." And it wasn't until I talked to my mom, because I just was like, I was not in the best headspace, because you have to understand, it was very humbling to get off of a stage with Beyonce to driving Uber. And even just the shame of potentially someone that had just seen the news articles written up about me, or all the stuff that I just broadcast as the hometown hero. And now being a driver, I felt like, oh my gosh, I failed my city. And there was so much shame attached to that, because I, again, started to place my value on the big stages that I was on, and I didn't realize the value was me, and there was other ways to still fulfill my life's purpose. I didn't get there yet, so I came back 3 months into being here. I was driving full time, and I ended up joining, it was an Uber community, and that's when things started to shift for me, because I was like, "You know what? I need to find new communities." And so in the Valley, once I started kinda I started getting back into therapy. I was like, "I need my therapist." And this was the beginning of me stop drinking, because I remember her asking me, she said, I don't know why she asked me this. Maybe I had told her I was drinking a lot. She's like, "Well, what do you say a lot? Like, how often are you drinking?" And I remember I lied to her, and that was a red flag. I'm like, if you're lying to a person that's here to help you, you got a problem, sis. So I remember I had downplayed it. I said, "Yeah, a few glasses of wine, maybe 3 times a week." That was a lie. I had mommy juice lined up every single night, and I drank until I would fall asleep. That was another thing that I had to finally, admit. And I remember her telling me, She was like, "Well, you do realize that alcohol is a depressant." And I may have heard that before, but it resonated more deeply because I'm like, if I'm dealing with depression and I'm trying to get out this hole and I'm turning to something that's keeping me in a cycle, I was just like, both of these things can't be. I need to let go of one so I can finally heal and deal with my feelings, deal with the disappointment, deal with, what the circumstances really are and get a grip and make a plan. And so once I started to let go of that, I could finally start to feel and heal and find other ways to fulfill myself and find communities. And so I joined the Facebook Uber group and they would have outings inside. I started meeting new people and I realized that although I didn't have like regular, I wasn't, when you don't have a regular job, you don't have adults to hang out and deal with like that. I was like, my passengers are giving me that outlet. So I started to open myself up more. So although, I have showcased this version of myself that's very talkative and engaging, it wasn't always that way. And I tell you this, the gift that was offered to me through my passengers and being more open, I had so many people that gave me gems. This one lady in particular, I remember this is when the shift started to happen in that valley. She told me her life story, like where she had just relocated and it wasn't like she expected. Her story sounded like mine. And she's like, I was so disappointed. I felt so lonely. I was like, this is me, but I'm just listening. She's telling me her story. And she's like, and the series changed my life. The series that this pastor was preaching changed my life. She just told me the name of it. When she told me the name, and I'm driving her to the airport, so many tears filled my eyes. I thought I was going to wreck because I couldn't see. I started crying so hard. I couldn't even contain it. The name of the series was Planted, Not Buried. It instantly, oh, it instantly freed me and changed my perspective. And to go from thinking you were buried and forgotten and lost to realizing that you were being planted. It did so much for me. I cried probably for the off and on for the whole day. It makes me want to cry now just because it was such a powerful change in perspective that allowed me to realize I was right where I was supposed to be. And there was some ministry happening inside of my car through me and to me that was necessary for me to unlock a new chapter. And that was the first part of me, like, coming out, like, as a little phoenix, like, I remember I would get in my car and I was excited, and I was like, who am I gonna meet today? What interaction is it going to give me another gem that's gonna unlock, this journey, this new journey?" And this one passenger was I'll never forget, I called him my earth angel. Now, this was my opportunity to share my story. That was where he was. So, how she shared her story, and it sounded like me and it freed me. Then I had this passenger. He was going through a period in his life. And it was the most interesting thing because, he was talkative. And I remember I was like, okay, where are you on your way to? He was on his way to work. And I said, do you like your job? And he got quiet. He got quiet and he looked off because I was looking at him in my rearview mirror and I was like, what's going on here? Like, did I ask the wrong question? And I saw tears start to well up in his eyes. And he's like, honestly, I hate my job. He's like, I feel like I'm living a lie. I'm lying to my friends. My car just got repoed and, I'm living in a place I can't afford. He just started just venting and he's crying and he's venting and I let him get it out. And, I tell people, sometimes as an Uber driver, you're really a therapist disguised as an Uber driver. And he just shared his story. And I said, let me tell you a secret. This is only a chapter. And I said, if you've ever read a book, you don't want to read a boring story anyways. Who wants to read a boring story? I said, so this is just one chapter. I was like, but you keep going and it gets better. And you will never stay in the same place that long. It has to unfold. And, I was able to share a little bit of my story and just how things have happened for me. And it led to us crying and hugging. and exchanging social media. And he's like, "Can I please have your Cash App? I just want to tip you because you need to get a dash cam and put it in your car, and you need to start filming your interactions and put it on social media." That gentleman is what unlocked my favorite chapter so far of my life, the rideshare queen. And that was so hard to take the gift from him because he had just shared his financial woes and all this stuff. But I felt like I had to because I didn't want to block his blessing. I knew the seed was an honest seed from him and that he too was going to be blessed in return because he didn't know me. He didn't know anything for real about who I was and what I was capable of. He was just giving an on. He wanted to bless me and he wanted me to get this dash cam. And he changed my life.
Wow. Well, I think what's so cool about your story and is just like none of us get here alone, and like we never know who we're going to pass or who we're going to come across, but keeping ourselves open to that. That was the difference maker for you, Deanna, is you were like you heard in that moment when that woman shared with you, planted, not buried. You heard that and you decided to do something with it and you opened your heart. And when we open our heart, our mind can't help but follow. It's the connection to the soul for all of us. I mean, it really blows my mind, this story. And then you started Rideshare Queen. And just tell us, what is Rideshare Queen and kind of what's unfolding for you right now in this current chapter?
So the rideshare queen is this persona that I created as an Uber driver because I felt like no matter where you are, I felt I still deserve to wear a crown. And that was my crown because I found out that what I was doing inside of my car was special. It was extraordinary, the lives that I was able to touch, change, impact, that impacted me. So it wasn't more than just a ride. There was an experience happening in my car. So I claimed that title as the rideshare queen, and I started thanks to that passenger that gifted me with $150 tip to buy my dash cam. I started recording my interactions, putting it on social media, became a viral sensation multiple times. I landed my first brand deal with my dash cam company, where they would pay me to post the videos I was already paying, what I was already posting. They would pay me to post these videos. And it opened up a world of what's called UGC, user generated content, where a lot of corporations now are finding influencers and social media people to market their brands, and they pay you to do it. So it unlocked this whole new world that I didn't even know about. I'm like, people are making a living on social media. And so I learned about that. I found out that you could make money on TikTok. And when I tell you, don't you ever use your age as an excuse to not learn something. I went to YouTube University and I learned how to use TikTok because I wasn't on TikTok 8 months ago. Learned how to use it, learned how to monetize, learned a few strategies. I started posting on there. I became a TikTok affiliate where you can market brands. So, honey, I want to say last year, just to quantify it, I made well over six figures driving Uber and as a content creator. And I want to say 70% of my income came from content creation, whether it was from TikTok, brand deals, and it's interesting because I've only been doing it for 8 months. And one of the biggest deals that I landed that I didn't even realize how big it was as the rideshare queen, I landed a national commercial with Febreze, a 5-figure deal, well into the 5-figure deal. And I didn't even know it was because, when they use the word brand collaboration, I've just assumed, oh, this is going to be on their social media page. And so I was filming when I found out it was gonna be a national commercial, and he was one of the film crew. He was like, "Man, you're gonna really blow up once this goes on TV." I said, "TV?" He was like, this is gonna be a national commercial." I said, "Stop. This is gonna be I'm freaking out. I'm like, "This is crazy." And not only was it a national commercial, but it was a national commercial as myself. Like I'm on here as like a rideshare queen. I got to sing, I got to be myself. And the other cool thing that's happened as a result of the rideshare queen is it hasn't come out yet, but April 8th, I've been called to do a few interviews on national television, but this one is really special. It's on the Jennifer Hudson Show, which will be airing April 8th, a few days after my birthday. And the significance of that, Amy, I met Jennifer Hudson 20 years ago on an American Idol audition. And I had a picture of us 20 years ago because we had both made it to the celebrity judges. Of course, she went on to actually be on the show. I didn't, but my auntie still had the picture. And so on the episode is going to show the picture of us side by side 20 years ago.
Oh my God. You know that saying that's like we overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year. And I think just to be like, Deanna a year ago, February 2023, or, January 2023, like that, Deanna could not have pictured. You would have never imagined this reality for yourself. And I think it's just so cool on the human experience to be like, once we just open ourselves up and allow how magical things can get beyond what we can think of for ourselves. Like, it's just so cool that you did the work, you kept yourself open, you connected to humans, and now you get to do something so cool with Rideshare Queen. I'm so proud. I just love, like, I mean, really, kicking it back from the 5th grade playground. Dee Dee and I were best friends in 5th and 6th grade. We cried because I moved away. We wrote a poem about best friends being ripped apart, so you can now see how we both have like a flair for drama in our personalities.
Yeah, when she moved away, I was so sad. But thank you so much for saying that you're proud of me. I am proud of me. And the thing I'm most proud of, because I now realize you're going to have the highs and you're going to have the valleys. But I've embraced the entire journey because actually what's been most rewarding about this year was the valley. Who I found in the valley, what unlocked about myself in the valley, the conditioning. I don't see it. I now have that planted buried mentality, planted versus being buried. Like, so when you go through those ebbs, it's usually something that's being conditioned in you to set you up better. And so I'm not afraid of that anymore, whereas it used to be like this devastating drop, like, "Oh my god." Now I'm like, "Okay, we about to unlock a new stage. There's more that needs to expand inside of me. Go down to go up."
It's like this trust of just like, I trust that I got this. I'll figure it out. I trust I'm supported. I trust, like, what a beautiful journey that is. I just think to wrap it up for listeners, when you kind of reflect back on, you knew what your passion was, it felt like a burden, you're able to now do it in a way you would have never ever expected. If there's somebody who's like in the valley, what advice do you want to give them right now? What do you feel like they should just focus on or do to come out on the other side?
If someone is in the valley right now, because I do believe with my whole soul that every chapter of your life is to serve a purpose. So I wouldn't look at it as a bookmark. I say look at it as an opportunity. Really go within yourself to see what is now newly needing to be unlocked inside of me. And the sooner you unlock it, then you can go up. You can go to your next round, but you don't want to go to the next round prematurely because these chapters let's call them seasons. These seasons is just like nature. You need the fall before the spring and you need the spring before the summer. They're all working together. So just see it as an opportunity and that is working together for your beautiful comeback story or for your new success story. But it's not a sad place. It's a beautiful place of development.
Okay, before we wrap up, I need to hear, because we're all about consciousness and all of the various forms. When you hear that word consciousness, what comes to mind for you? What does that mean for you and specifically on your journey?
Okay, so I wrote this down because I was like, what does that mean to me? And I said, for me, that my definition of consciousness is being completely in tune with myself, being self-aware and being present. That for me is consciousness.
Thank you for sharing your time. Thank you for sharing your story. I know that like listeners are going to be blowing up my email and my text and my inboxes, just loving up on you. So thank you. Thank you, Deanna, for being you.
Thank you for this platform. I'm honored. And you keep killing it too, girl. I'm watching you. I'm watching you. I'm inspired. So we inspire each other. Thank you so much.
Before we wrap up this episode, here are my 3 takeaways from Deanna and how we can incorporate them into our lives. Number 1, stay flexible. I think the theme of Deanna's life is that she has been willing for life to take her where it was meant to go. Sometimes that may have been met with resistance, but eventually she surrendered. And when you think of the path of someone who wants to be a singer, there's typically only one clear path. It's like, success looks like you're going to be on a stage, you're going to be selling out stadiums, and it can be no other way. When we add that it can be no other way, we create so much limitation. And I love that Deanna learned how to stay flexible. Number 2, work on you. This could be a takeaway from every dang episode that we've ever recorded because every guest has something in common. They've done the work on themselves to learn about them and move beyond themselves. And I love that Deanna is working on herself even in her sleep. She texted me some of the YouTube videos that she's been listening to, and I am committed to popping those babies on so that I can continue to work on this mind of mine even while I'm snoozing at night. Number 3, planted, not buried. Deanna received that message in an unexpected way exactly when she needed it, and it changed her perception on everything. It shifted her from this potentially victim or unsure mindset of feeling really down and a little shameful to feeling empowered. And I love that we can take this lesson and keep ourselves just open. Okay, is there a chance for me to see this differently? Am I in a tough situation where maybe I'm planted here? I'm not buried here. I'm going to grow from this situation. And also, can we keep ourselves open for wisdom from strangers? We're all so often distracted, head down on our phone, making sure that we don't have any uncomfortable exchanges, but are we limiting ourselves to wisdom that we might receive from the humans around us? Thanks for listening to the Conscious Habit Podcast. If you dug this episode, we'd love it if you would subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you're into this consciousness thing, if you like this conversation and you want to meet more like-minded people, head on over to Facebook and join the Conscious Habit community. Until next time, do the world a favor and go love yourself.